Mars's crimson horizon stretched endlessly, a stark contrast to the towering machines dotting the barren landscape. Cassandra Jones stood at the helm of her latest creation, the TerraformX, a groundbreaking device capable of producing breathable air in the Martian atmosphere. As lead engineer for the Mars Terraformation Initiative, Cassandra had poured her heart into this project, dreaming of a future where humans could walk Mars without life support suits. "Systems check, Cassandra," came the voice of her coworker Michael Benson through her helmet's comms. Michael, a rugged, sharp-witted systems analyst, was her closest friend in the colony and her unshakable supporter. "Everything's green," Cassandra replied, her voice confident. "Today's the day we make history, Mike." The test site, an isolated sector far from the colony's core, buzzed with excitement as drones and engineers prepared for the machine's maiden run. The TerraformX hummed to life, its reactors glowing faintly as it began converting Martian CO2 into oxygen. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, it worked perfectly. The air around the machine shimmered, tiny particles of breathable oxygen forming in the harsh Martian winds. Then everything went wrong. A faint tremor turned into a violent quake as the machine's reactors overheated. Sparks flew, and the ground beneath the test site fractured. Alarms blared in Cassandra's helmet as the TerraformX emitted a deafening roar. She barely had time to shout a warning before a shockwave hurled her backward, her body slamming into the rocky ground. Pain shot through her legs as debris rained down, pinning her beneath a jagged piece of the machine's casing. Smoke and dust filled the air, the acrid scent of burnt metal invading her senses. She tried to move, but her legs refused to obey. "Cassandra!" Michael's voice pierced the chaos. He sprinted toward her, dodging falling debris and collapsing machinery. I can't move," she gasped, panic creeping into her voice. "Mike, my legs. I can't feel them." Michael knelt beside her, his gloved hands already working to free her from the wreckage. The weight of the debris made it clear she wasn't getting out unscathed. Around them, engineers were retreating to safety as emergency sirens signaled a colony-wide evacuation order for the test sector. "Everyone's pulling out," a voice crackled in Michael's comms. "Get out of there now. That sector's compromised." Michael ignored the order. "I'm not leaving without you," he said firmly, his blue eyes locking with hers through their visors. "You'll die if you stay." Cassandra protested, coughing as the air grew thinner. The life support systems in her suit were holding, but the clock was ticking. "Then we'll die together," Michael shot back. "Or better yet, we'll figure this out." Despite the chaos around them, Michael remained calm, using a compact laser cutter to slice away the debris trapping her. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the seconds dragged on, each one bringing them closer to certain death. Finally, with a grunt of effort, he freed her. Gently lifting Cassandra into his arms, he activated his helmet's navigation system. The nearest safe zone was miles away, and their oxygen supplies were dwindling. "This is insane," Cassandra whispered as she clung to him, pain and exhaustion making her lightheaded. "You should have left me." "Not happening," Michael said, his voice resolute. "You do the same for me." He carried her through the wreckage, the Martian winds howling like a chorus of ghosts. Every step was a struggle against gravity and despair, but Michael pressed on, determined to find a way out. Cassandra, though racked with guilt and pain, felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone. In the distance, the TerraformX exploded in a fiery plume, a stark reminder of how close they'd come to death. But even as the flames consumed her creation, Cassandra realized something profound. Her survival wasn't just about her legs or her machine. It was about the people who refused to give up on her. And Michael Benson wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. The Martian landscape stretched out before them like an endless sea of red dust and jagged rocks. Michael trudged forward, each step laborious as he carried Cassandra in his arms. Her suit's life support systems flickered intermittently, warning lights flashing on his HUD. He could feel the weight of her body and the clock ticking down on their survival. "You have to put me down," Cassandra murmured, her voice weak but resolute. "You'll burn out before we even get halfway." Michael glanced at her through his visor, his jaw tightening. "Not happening. I didn't stay behind just to leave you in the dirt." She sighed but didn't argue. The pain in her legs was gone, replaced by a cold numbness that terrified her more than anything. Her mind raced, calculating distances and resources. They had oxygen for maybe 6 hours, and the nearest abandoned outpost, a relic from early colonization attempts, was at least 10 miles away. Michael stopped and carefully set her down on a flat rock, crouching to catch his breath. "We need a plan," he said, scanning the horizon. "I can't carry you all the way to the outpost, and the comms are fried. We're on our own." Cassandra's engineer's mind kicked in despite her condition. "We need to use what we have," she said, motioning weakly to the small survival pack Michael had salvaged from the wreckage. "The drones, did you grab any parts?" Michael nodded, pulling a bundle of components from the pack. "A few stabilizers and propulsion units. Not much, but maybe enough to build something." "Good," Cassandra said, her voice steadier now. "We can use the propulsion units to build a makeshift sled or a mobility device. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to get me moving." Michael's face lit up with admiration. Even in the face of disaster, Cassandra's mind was sharp as ever. "All right, boss," he said, grinning. "Let's get to work." Over the next 2 hours, the pair worked tirelessly. Michael scavenged rocks and metal scraps to reinforce the propulsion units, while Cassandra directed him on how to assemble them into a crude hover platform. Her fingers were clumsy inside her gloves, but her instructions were precise. "Attach the stabilizer there," she said, pointing to a jagged corner of the platform. "If we don't balance the weight, the whole thing will tip." "Got it," Michael replied, his hands moving quickly. "You know, this is almost fun if you ignore the part where we might die." Cassandra let out a dry chuckle. "I'll put fun in the mission report. Assuming we live to write one." Finally, they powered up the device. It hummed to life, hovering a few inches above the ground. Michael helped Cassandra onto it, securing her with straps from the survival pack. The hover platform wobbled but held steady. "It's not exactly comfortable," Cassandra said, wincing as the motion jostled her legs. "Comfort's a luxury," Michael replied. "This is survival." The hover platform was slow but effective, gliding over the Martian terrain while Michael walked beside it, pushing and guiding it over rough patches. The silence between them was filled with the hum of the platform and the distant whisper of the wind. Occasionally, Michael glanced at Cassandra, marveling at her resilience. Hours passed. Their oxygen levels dipped dangerously low, and fatigue clawed at both of them. Just when the outpost seemed like a distant dream, Michael spotted a dark shape on the horizon. "There," he shouted, his voice filled with relief. "It's the outpost." Cassandra squinted, her vision blurred from exhaustion. The shape resolved into a squat, dome-shaped structure partially buried in the sand. It was an old research station, long abandoned but potentially still functional. Michael quickened his pace, adrenaline overriding his fatigue. He reached the outpost and forced the door open with a grunt, the old metal creaking in protest. Inside, the airlock hissed as it activated, confirming the structure still had power. "Come on," Michael urged, guiding the hover platform into the airlock. Once inside, he sealed the door and activated the pressurization system. Stale but breathable air flooded the chamber. Cassandra inhaled deeply, relief washing over her. "We made it." "Barely," Michael said, slumping against the wall. His face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. Cassandra's eyes widened. "Mike, your oxygen dash." "I'm fine," he said, waving her off. "Just need a minute." But Cassandra wasn't convinced. She watched him closely as the pressurization completed, and the inner door opened. The outpost's interior was dusty but intact, its emergency systems still operational. Michael carried Cassandra to a cot and began checking the outpost's inventory. "We've got enough supplies here to last a week," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Oxygen tanks, water filters, even some medkits. It's not paradise, but it's something." "Mike," Cassandra said softly. "You saved me. You didn't have to, but you did." Michael turned to her, his expression serious. "You're the smartest, toughest person I've ever met, Cass. Mars needs you. And so do I." For the first time since the accident, Cassandra felt a flicker of hope. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting. And with Michael by her side, she knew they had a chance. The outpost's emergency systems hummed quietly, a soothing rhythm in the otherwise desolate silence. Cassandra lay on the cot, her eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling. The pain in her legs had dulled, but the fear of permanent paralysis lingered. Michael worked tirelessly nearby, cobbling together a makeshift radio from the outpost's outdated equipment. "Anything?" Cassandra asked, her voice strained. Michael didn't look up. "Not yet. The signal's weak, but I'm boosting it with parts from the life support backup. Someone out there has to be listening." Cassandra sighed, glancing at the oxygen gauge on the wall. They had just enough to last another 5 days. What if no one's listening? "They will be," Michael said firmly, his determination unwavering. "I'm not letting us die out here." Miles away, in the heart of the Mars colony, Captain Elaine Ramirez sat in a dimly lit control room. She had once been a celebrated pilot, known for daring missions and unshakable resolve. But that was before the accident, a catastrophic crash that left her arms paralyzed. Now, with advanced prosthetics, she worked as a consultant, her days filled with routine analysis and distant dreams of the stars. As she sifted through communications logs, a faint, distorted signal caught her attention. "This is Michael Benson, requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates are..." The transmission crackled and faded. Elaine's eyes narrowed. She adjusted the controls, amplifying the signal. "Repeat," the voice came again, faint but clear. "This is Michael Benson. We are stranded at Outpost Theta 9. Life support is critical. Please respond." Elaine's heart raced. Theta 9 was deep in the Martian wastelands, a region long abandoned due to its harsh conditions. Her mind flashed to the reports of the Terraform X disaster and the engineers presumed dead. Was this Michael and Cassandra? Without hesitation, she forwarded the signal to the colony's command center. The response was swift but disheartening. "Rescue to Theta 9 is too dangerous," the commander said. "We can't spare the resources for retrieval in that zone. The risk outweighs the benefit." Elaine clenched her fists, her mechanical fingers curling into tight balls. "They're alive," she argued. "We can't just leave them." "I'm sorry, Elaine," the commander said. "The decision is final." Elaine stared at the screen, her mind made up. If the colony wouldn't act, she would. For the first time in years, she felt the fire of purpose reignite within her. She knew the risks, but she also knew that if she didn't go, no one would. Back at Theta 9, the days dragged on. Michael and Cassandra rationed their supplies, their hope dwindling with each passing hour. Michael continued to tinker with the radio, but the signal had gone silent. "Maybe no one heard us," Cassandra said, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Someone heard us. We just have to hold on." Suddenly, a faint rumble echoed through the outpost. The ground trembled slightly, and a low-pitched hum filled the air. Michael's head shot up, his eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" Cassandra strained to listen. "It's the ship." "That's a ship." They scrambled over, and Cassandra's case struggled to the nearest window. A sleek craft descended from the ochre sky, its landing lights piercing the dusty haze. The ship settled 100 yards from the outpost, its engines powering down. The outer hatch hissed open, and a figure emerged, a woman clad in an advanced flight suit with cybernetic arms gleaming under the Martian sun. Michael's jaw dropped. "Captain Elaine Ramirez," he whispered. "She's a legend." Elaine approached the outpost, her movements swift and confident. Michael rushed to meet her, and Cassandra's heart surged with hope. "You're the one who sent the signal?" Elaine asked, her voice calm but commanding. Michael nodded. "Yes. Thank you for coming. We didn't think anyone would." Elaine glanced past him to Cassandra, assessing her condition with a practiced eye. "I've got medkits and oxygen on board. Can she be moved?" "She'll have to be," Michael said. "We don't have a choice." Elaine's face softened. "Then let's get her out of here." The rescue was fraught with challenges. Cassandra's hover platform barely fit in Elaine's compact craft, and the storm brewing on the horizon threatened to ground them before they could take off. But Elaine's experience shone through. With steady hands and precise calculations, she guided the ship through the turbulence. Inside the cabin, Cassandra looked at Elaine, awe evident in her eyes. "Why did you come for us?" "The colony said it was too dangerous." Elaine smiled faintly, her cybernetic fingers flexing as she piloted the craft. "Because I've been where you are, left behind, told I wasn't worth the risk. Someone saved me when I thought no one would. Now it's my turn." Cassandra swallowed hard, emotion welling in her chest. "Thank you." Elaine nodded. "We're not out of the woods yet. Stay focused. We'll talk when we're back at the colony." The journey back was tense but uneventful. As the colony's gleaming domes came into view, a wave of relief washed over them all. They had made it. Against all odds, they had survived. And they weren't alone anymore.